Hey everybody, I'm Dane Sanders, and I want to welcome you to Fast Track Coaching. This is our 116 or 17th, maybe 16 and a half episode because of what happened this past week. But really thrilled that you're here. And let me explain how this whole thing's going to work. For those of you new to the show, we do this 30-minute conversation, 30 minutes or so, depending on how interesting it is to you and to them. But the intention is to be as engaged as possible. The purpose is to move the business and the creativity for all of us forward just a little bit. And I think that you'll find that if you get involved versus just spectate, you're going to get a lot more out of it. And today's topic, I think, is really important. I should also mention, too, the way to get involved is not just to chat in the chat room, but to also click that light bulb and ask your questions there. That way we can pull your questions up on screen. And then we'll go from there. So without further ado, I want to invite my guest on. Hey, everybody, this is JB Salih, and that is indeed his perfect space of lamp and video game that we'll find out all about, I'm sure, in just a moment. But I want to thank you first, JB, for being here on the show. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah. Thanks, Dane Cook. I'm really excited to be, Dane Sanders. How are you?
By the way, you're such a dork. We're not even... I knew we'd be friends the moment I saw your video. I was like, yeah, he and we'll be friends. This is great. But you're new to the show too, and obviously you brought a lot of friends with you, which is great. But I'm wondering, for those who don't know who you are, especially for in different parts of the country, could you get people up to speed a little bit on you and your wife and what you do with the photo business, how long you've been in the business, and just give us a brief snapshot as to your own journey in the photo industry?
Yeah, sure. My wife and I have been in business for 8 years now in Dallas, Texas. We went to school for photography. I studied fine art photography. She studied technology photography and also psychology, which is pretty good in our business since we deal with a lot of brides for 12 months or longer. So she's the smart one for sure. I sit on the computer and touch up all the images, and then we split the workload evenly for shooting. Sorry, I'm going out of focus. It's this sweet camera I bought. There we go.
You know, I have the same issue with my camera, and one of the things that I do is when it gets out of focus, I just hold my hand up to it and it focuses on my hand, and then it recalibrates. That's number one. Number two, I should also mention, some folks are mentioning that the volume is a little low. So
okay.
if you want to go into your system preferences and raise it up to about 75%, that's ideal.
What if I put the mic here? Is this better, guys?
Oh, that's much better. That's better? Great.
Okay, cool.
I have a hunch in the chat. Great. I should also mention, too, for those of you who are asking in the chat room, as JB is sharing a little bit about his history in Dallas, the way to ask questions is you click on the little light bulb in the kind of middle right-hand side, and you can type in text questions or even hook up your video camera for live video questions. But sorry for interrupting you, man. Go ahead and jump back in where you were.
Yeah, cool. So I think I was saying we've been in business for 8 years. I think the one thing that... High five. I think the one thing that really worked for us was getting into a bridal show right away and just showing something different. We got married, I think, a year into our business. So we were actually searching for wedding photographers and going to all these big bridal shows in Dallas and saying, man, all these guys are doing the same thing. These 40 by 60 beautiful portraits, but very traditional, in these huge gold frames. And we were like, what if we could do something different and show something different? We could really stand out and we could rock this show. So that's exactly what we did. We showed up with 40 by 15 panos, panoramic images, and awesome books, different sizes, 17 by 8 books with metallic paper with linen texture pressed into the paper. Anything different just to stand out at this show, and it worked right away. We booked 58 weddings our first show, and we were kicking ourselves later. That was way too many weddings to book for our first year. And my wife and I actually shot every single wedding together for the first 2 years of our business. But now we split up and divide and conquer. So I shoot 15 weddings, she shoots 15 weddings, and we split all the portraits. And then myself and my Photoshop team, we do all the touch-ups. And then Diet, my wife, she takes care of the customer service. So it works pretty well.
By the way, again, just a little technical thing that I'm getting feedback on is that people are saying that I'm too loud, which isn't the first time I've heard that in my life. So if the volume is too outrageous, let me know and we'll back that off somehow. And I can do some of that right now by doing this.
Should I turn my
but
mic
that's
up a
great.
little
If it's available, that'd be great. But I think we're fine.
bit? Okay. Okay. I'll speak up.
So that's great. So let's talk about this for a second, because as you jumped into the industry in a very competitive market, I mean, Dallas has some amazing photographers. Who's there in the background? Who's there?
My
Who is
wife,
it?
she's
Is
making
it
me
Diet?
nervous. My wife.
Well, she's got to say hi. She
She's like,
can't
"Can I
just
come
do
in?" I was
that. She
like,
has to
"No,
do a
she'll make me
cameo.
nervous."
No, she gets to
So
come on
funny.
camera. Where is she?
There she is.
How are we supposed to get
She
our
can't
ratings
log
up
on,
if
she
we don't
said.
have her on the camera? It's very popular. Hi, how are you, my friend?
He says, "How are you?"
You know,
Good.
our viewership and ratings would have gone way up if we had had her on instead of you, JB. I'm not going to lie.
I know. She's the pretty one.
I feel the same way with my wife. That's why I never let her on camera. People would entirely stop tuning in. So, but nice to meet you from a distance, Diet.
He said, "Nice to meet you."
Tell her she has to be on the show next time.
You have to be on the show next time.
So here's the deal. So you get into a very competitive market in Dallas, and there's a lot of photographers vying for attention, and you show up on the scene and you knock it out of the park with 58 weddings your first year. I have a hunch your second year was probably pretty nuts too. And
30.
in that, I'm guessing that you had a temptation, or at least you've seen a lot of other photographers give in to the temptation of this whole shoot to burn phenomenon, where people would, because it's easy to buy a pro grade camera, to learn enough of a skill set with your camera to get in the market, but then connecting the dots to actually sell profitable products and get your cost of sale in order, and getting all those pieces in play. A lot of folks see those as hurdles that are just too high to overcome, and they end up just settling for a shoot to burn product line. Well, it's not a product line, it's a single product. It's I'll show up and trade my money in for my time and give you a disc of images. And it can feel like that's really profitable because you make a decent, seemingly per hour wage, but it doesn't always turn out very well. And I'm wondering what's been your experience, in either in your own experience or in seeing other photographers who've tried that route, and what kind of results that has turned out for them as they've gone down that road.
You know, I've never really met a photographer that's come out and said, "I just shoot and burn." Not once. And we've been educating for 6 years now. Not one person's come up and said that. I think all the people that come up and see our seminars and talk to us realize the way to go is to sell professional products. If you're not selling products, you're not making enough profit to stay in business and put food on your table for your family. So I haven't really seen that problem. I know there's 1,500 photographers here in Dallas, Fort Worth alone, wedding photographers, that is, not even portrait photographers. So I know they're out there. I know they're somewhere, but we just don't ever run into them. So it's hard to answer that question.
You know, it's interesting. I was just in Dallas. I can't believe we didn't hang out less than a month. And I was hanging out with a couple of photographers and also with, that's right. And I was hanging out with another person that was there with us was Mike Handley from White House, and Mike asked a couple of photographers straight up directly, "So do you sell product?" Because he smelled it. He could tell that some folks weren't, and they said, "No, we just do the shoot to burn thing." And I've noticed that increasingly photographers are more honest with that stuff, which I think is pretty. Again, you have to start with a place of honesty. Like, what are you actually doing? And I know of all the folks that are watching this or catching it on a replay, there's a certain percentage of folks who are tuning in precisely because maybe they've gone to your road show or your trainings and they felt a little indicted, or they were just too afraid to say out loud, "Hey, I just do this, but I don't know how to get out of the shoot to burn mindset into something that is more profitable and sustainable, and more legitimate, where I'm actually selling products, not just files." So let's talk for a second. What is it about selling files that is problematic? And I understand that it is, and I have a lot of ideas on my own, but I want to hear from your perspective. Where does that idea break down for folks, and and not without like a judgment on it, but more just like understanding that if you're just starting out or you don't really get it, they might not understand how foolish it actually is. And how would you argue with somebody or make the case that if good to see you.
High five.
How would you make high five? How would you make the case to somebody that it's just not a good idea to lead with a shoot to burn mindset? Why does that break down?
Yeah, and just to be upfront and honest, my wife and I, we do sell files, but we do it in a different manner. We don't just sell the files in the package right away and not give any products. We do it after the wedding, and we'll say for $500 after the wedding, after everything's said and done, if you want to, you can buy your raw files for archival purposes only, not for printing purposes, not for sharing purposes, just to archive and keep safe for $500. And that seems to keep people really happy. You know, we don't want to hold anybody's files hostage and not give them files. Especially we had our daughter 2 years ago, and I'm the same way as a father. When we take professional portraits of her, if somebody else takes them, I want the files. Not because I want to be cheap and go print it out myself and save money, because I want that security that I'm going to have those files when she's, 25, 45, whatever, getting married, and
Yep.
I have something to use if that studio is out of business or out of commission. So we do give the files away. For people that don't give products in their packages, I think it's a big disservice to themselves, not just the industry. That's how we make a profit. We're not making a profit off just giving files away. We got to sell something to these people, and they want it. They want something on their wall. They want to display something at the wedding. They want to have a nice wedding album. So by not doing that, it's just a big disservice. I know there's a ton of companies out there that give cheap albums away. If you get your files, you can make your own albums online, but they're just not good looking albums. They want something professionally made and professionally bound that's going to last for years.
Mm-hmm. So I love that. So on the one hand, you're saying, listen, it's not a big deal that somebody is wanting the files. That's a reasonable expectation or hope. Even if it's just for archive purposes, if the photographer falls off the face of the earth, having those available is important. But you're also saying that that's not sufficient. Like, you need to be able to go further and deliver. And I know from my own story, when I got married 15 years ago, we got our proof book with a bunch of 4x6s in it, and the photographer didn't try to upsell us or sell us an album or anything. He was totally satisfied with the $1,500 we spent, and we even got the actual physical negatives. But I'm bummed because we went a decade without an album, and as a professional, years later, I had to go and do it, and I just am bummed because I didn't get to have tangible artifacts of the day to prove it happened, to point to it, beyond these really kind of not worth $1,500 proofs. I wanted something more concrete and tangible to it. So let's turn the corner then for a second and talk a little bit about how does somebody make the transition if they're clear on, okay, I know enough to take pictures, I know enough to show up at the wedding day and make people happy and have it all work out and to actually get the files ready. Where you'd go to develop products for sale that would be at a pro grade level that wouldn't feel very consumery or like books kind of stuff? Where would you go first?
Do you want me to pimp my lab? Is that what you're asking? Or I know we have different labs, so I don't want to answer that.
Well, I think going to a lab, I think is reasonable. I think you use Miller's and I use White House, which is great. There's no problem with that. I just and I think both are fantastic labs. But it sounds like at the beginning it's choose a great lab, and then once you've chosen a great lab, what kind of products would you want to offer first? I guess first for the wedding market, and then we can talk about other things later. But I think for some people, like for me, it was always about selling the album and selling not just a album, but an expandable album that started at this level, but there was great incentives for them to buy this level of an album. But is that, do you go to your lab first? Do you look at album companies first? What are the products that you actually ultimately want to sell and get in the mind of the customer to be selling?
Yeah, definitely albums. I think that's a great way to start any business. We actually started our business with one album. It was a wedding that I shot with another photographer in Dallas, Texas, with my camera and my card, and I took those images and I made a 16-page album, and that's what we showed off to people. And we booked 28 weddings before we ever shot our first wedding. And that's insane to me to book that many weddings with one little album. So it shows if you want to start somewhere, have a portfolio of images that you can show off. especially in the wedding market. You need to have a complete wedding, start to finish. Show the pre-ceremony, the ceremony, the family formals, the reception images, the departing images. If you want to shoot that stuff, you got to show that stuff. You can't just get out there with a pretty face and a smile and get in business. You got to show photography to be a photographer. So album's a great start. Go ahead, Dane.
Well, let me ask you about that with regards to albums. So let's say I decide, okay, that my first product line is going to be albums. That's great. I decide on a lab that's going to print for me. I decide on an album company that's going to deliver the product when it's all done. What about the infrastructure of getting that ready? Like, how much do you charge for it? How you work out your pricing? Like, for example, Sparkyfly Photo asks the question, how do we start on the product game? Priceless, lots of album options. It's overwhelming. If you're having coffee with Sparkfly Photo, and they're asking you just honestly, like, I know what I'm supposed to do, but where do I get started with pricing and album options? And what advice would you give to that person in a way that would be not overwhelming, but give them tangible first steps to get moving?
That's a good question. I'm totally the wrong person to ask. I think Lori Nordstrom would be the person to ask money questions. But I'll tell you what we did, and it worked pretty well. We made a profit, which was good. What we would do is just take the album price. Let's say it's $200, and we multiply it times 5, and it would come out to what is that? 1,000?
100 or 1,000.
So 1,000. Yeah, so $1,000 is what we charge, but none of the albums cost $200. The wedding albums would cost us $300, $350. So when we started our business, it was just very simple. We didn't know what the heck we were doing. We didn't go to school for business at all. We went to school for photography. So we were just lucky just to sell stuff. And we'd put that into a package, and we'd had 3 different packages, $1,350, $1,850, and $2,350, and with all different size albums. And everybody wanted the $2,350 package because it had the biggest albums with the most pages. And we were happy making a profit. So we did make a profit that first year. But we definitely saw the need to raise our prices. So now we're at 1,000% markup. So we mark everything up times 10, and it works pretty well.
That's pretty great. Now, why times 5 and times 10? I have a 5 by multiplier as well, and for me, that's to get an 80% profit margin. And out of that 80% profit margin, I want 10% pure profit. And out of that 70% that's left, I want to cover all of my, expenses, including the physical product itself, but also like all my overhead and paying myself and all that sort of thing goes into that 70%. And those are pretty akin to, PPA benchmarks, but was it just pure, like you can get away with getting a 1,000% profit, or what was it about, or a 10 by profit? The market would bear it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We noticed that when we raised our prices, and it's great doing the big bridal show in Dallas, it's every 6 months. So if something failed, we could fix it the next time and we're not out of business. So we raised our prices too much, which we actually did one year, about 5 years ago. We went a little crazy and thought we could raise it up too much. Sorry, I lost train of thought. So the bridal show, definitely, if we're raising our prices, we can figure out what's working, what's not working. People would actually take our price card at this one show and say, "You're just too expensive." They'd hand the card back to us, and that's when we know that we're too expensive for our market. So it's definitely what the market can bear. What you can get away with, yeah, it's true. We're artists. It's hard to pinpoint what you should sell your stuff for, but our clients seem pretty happy with our prices. We haven't raised our prices in 8 years. We still sell our 5x7s and 8x10s for the same exact price we did 8 years ago, and we're happy with that price. And it's not much. I don't even want to tell you because it's kind of embarrassing, but it's not $8. I promise. But,
well, no, let's talk about this without getting. I mean, you can get into specifics if you want, which I love, because I think that there's something important to recognize with what is the product you want to sell. Like, for example, I got in a conversation once with the guys at the Costco lab as we were in there, buying whatever we were buying for our family, and I was up to the Costco tech, and I said, how can you sell 4x6s for, at that time it was 19 cents or whatever, and he went on to say, well, it cost us way more than 19 cents. We know that if people come in and buy 19-cent 4x6s, they're going to go around the corner and buy a couple washer and dryer sets and way too many bulk order apples and soda. So we don't care. It's just a lost lead. And on some level, it sounds like if you're not trying to make your money off of reprint sales, but are trying to make your money off of album sales, then it's less of a burden to have to raise those prices. But is that your strategy, or what's your thinking with regards to pricing, a 5x or a 10x for albums, but not that same kind of scale for print prices?
I think for print pricing, it's kind of the same thing. We want to keep our clients happy. It's hard for them to see a big value in a 5x7, a loose 5x7, and an 8x10 as well. But when you're selling a huge gallery wrap that's beautiful and it's got a nice frame on it, they see the value in that. It's something tangible, so we can mark that up a little more. And like I tell people all the time, not our clients but photographers, we have the most expensive equipment on the market, the most expensive lenses. I don't have $20,000 worth of equipment to sell a 5x7. It doesn't make any sense. The 5x7s and the Christmas cards and all that stuff, that's just the bonus stuff for our clients. We want to sell albums, we want to sell wall portraits, and we want to put our art up on our clients' walls. We don't want them to hide our 5x7 somewhere, because my wife and I, we spend a lot of time shooting. If we spend 2 hours shooting and we get 150 great images, it breaks our heart when people just buy 10 5x7s and that's all they want. We want to sell that big, beautiful piece of art, and I want to go over and hang it up on their walls myself and take a picture and post it on Facebook and show people where our art is. I think that's the most gratifying part of what we do. We didn't get into this business to make money. We got into it because we love making art for our clients, and we still do. The money's always been there. We've never thought about we need to charge this much for 5x7s to make a profit because PPA tells us so, which I've read the benchmark and it's beautifully done. I think it's perfect. And if you're looking for a way to charge for your 8x10s, read that benchmark survey and go through the little worksheet and figure out what you should be charging for an 8x10. But I'll tell you our prices. We charge $100 for an 8x10. We've been charging $100 for an 8x10 since day one. It's not too much. It's not too little. 5x7s are $40, and for $40 they also get the digital file with our logo on it placed on Facebook. So I think that's a really good deal. That keeps our clients happy and it keeps them coming back. They know they can get their wall portrait from us or their album, and they can also get 15 to 35x7s and all those files on Facebook. So that's how we're keeping our clients happy when things change so much.
One of the things I love about what you're saying, JB, is this idea of thinking from the perspective of the client and what's valuable to them. So without having this kind of arbitrary number of, I'm going to charge this, and how do I, it's really interesting. Faith asked a very kind of important question that I think a lot of folks are feeling, but are sometimes afraid to raise to the point is, in the current market where I am, brides ask for digital files. How do I convince them otherwise? I don't know if your job is to convince them otherwise. I wonder if your job is more to understand what their question is about and provide value to them on their terms that doesn't put you out of business, that still makes you a profit. And as I'm hearing your response, thank you very much, Chapman. As I'm hearing your response to this stuff, JB, it's like adding value is everything. And in their eyes, like for example, you mentioned the smaller prints. This is a package I just got, I received from White House for a client that's going out here shortly. And adding value can happen in a lot of different ways. Like there's just a couple 8x10s, little 8x10, little 8x10. And what I actually do is I package them by putting them on a little styrene back so it doesn't feel like a loose print. And it's amazing how when it's print ready, not only is it more durable, but it adds value because it doesn't seem to be the same as what everyone's offering. That kind of thing is one way I think to go, but I think there's a lot of ways, and all of it is in the mindset of what's valuable to the client, not what do I perceive as valuable and want to push that on to people. Would you agree with that mindset, or how would you respond to Faith's question?
No, totally. Yeah, especially in this economy, it's, like I said, it's tough to put a value in a loose 5x7. I should have explained a little bit more. My wife actually came up with this a couple of years ago. We're now taking the 5x7 and putting it into an 8x10 mat, and then a nice box with a ribbon around it and a logo on top. So the perceived value is higher on that. And she actually sells it as a product. So if you want 15 5x7s, you get a little volume discount, and it's matted, and it looks really nice. So that's one thing we changed 2 years ago. No more loose prints. Clients don't see the value in a loose print. Clients also don't see the value in a 33-cent CD with their images on it.
That's right.
So if people want a CD from us, we'll sell it to them. We'll sell them the CD of the portrait images as an image box. And I wish I had one here. You got your cool product. I want one.
Yeah.
We have an image box that we sell with 50 images.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, I lost my screen. There we go. So we sell an image box that holds 50 5x7 metallic prints.
Yeah.
It also has a little CD hub built into the top flap. And we put the CD inside that box, and we put our logo on it, and we say, for sharing or for personal printing rights up to a 5x7. So they can take that CD in, get it printed out. They're fully touched up. They look beautiful. So we're happy with that. If the image is touched up and they're not printing larger than a 5x7, we're totally cool with that, if they buy the product.
Yeah, that's great. I love that too, that you're kind of, can I buy the digital files? Can I have the digital files? Yes, you can. Right along the side when you buy this whatever print. That's right. You can always figure it out. Now, there's a bunch of questions that are coming in right now. I want to address that. One question here is, we find that $2,500 to $3,500 clients can't afford another $15 for an album. How do you upsell? And Jim, I appreciate the question. I know we all have different techniques on how to upsell. How do you go about the upsell process, JB?
Let me clarify the question. Is this a $2,500 to $3,500 wedding package, or a portrait client spending $2,500 to $3,500?
I think it's a fair assessment to go with, and I'm assuming. Forgive me if I'm wrong on this, Jim, but let's answer it from the assumption that it's a wedding package that came in at $2,500 to $3,500, and you're giving them an option to spend more money on the album.
If it is about a wedding package, I think Jim's right on. We've noticed the same thing in 8 years of shooting weddings. People don't have money after the wedding. People don't have money 45 days before the wedding. If you want to upsell and if that's your goal, you've got to get them in 45 days before the wedding or more when they still have money in that budget. Otherwise, everything's spent. Every single vendor out there for wedding, they have add-ons. They're making more money and the bride's spending more money. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. And that's how businesses run. They run off profit. So I would say bring the clients in before the wedding and try to upsell them that $1,500 album or whatever, or just include that $1,500 album into your pricing and raise your package price up. I hate to tell anybody that because I don't know your market, Jim, but I would include the album. That's what we've done for years and clients love it.
It's interesting. There's a lot to what you're saying in there because first off, the $2,500 to $3,500 client, that is a particular socio-demographic that might be worth investigating. Is that the best kind of price point you want to come in at relative to the value you bring to the table? But I also think you're onto something, GB, when you talk about this 45-day out thing. One trick that I learned from Jared Ghionis, which I really appreciated, was I do album pre-design. So I show the first thing clients see when they get back from their wedding is an album pre-design of a very large album, much larger than the one that they have included in their package. And I told them that on the consult before they even booked me, that that's what's going to happen and that they're going to upsell themselves. But it's also way back then that I tell them, look, if you want to pre-order more album sides before you upsell yourself later and it's expensive, then what'll happen is you're going to be bummed. So what I'd love to do is if you want to pre-order those, you can buy it at a 30% discount. And if you buy 14 pages in advance, then that 30% discount will carry all the way through till after the sale. And that does a couple things. Number one, it gets more album purchased and the package price gets bigger on the front end, way back when they book. And on the back end, they're in the mindset of I might still get more pages added because I've pre-purchased this option of getting 30% off those sides and pages. And I found that to be very helpful. It just gets clients in the mindset of I might get more than I thought I was going to get initially, but it's on their terms where there's no kind of deception and it's full disclosure on pricing, and they know what they're getting themselves into. But when they have that emotional need of I want more images in my book, it creates incentive for them to do that. Anyways, that's what I've done. Right. Does that, do you do album pre-design, or have you ever thought about that?
We do, yeah. We pre-design the album. We say 2 weeks after the wedding's done, we have their proof box finished. We have their pre-designed album finished. They come in, they see all the images. Anything they want to order after the wedding is 25% off. So if they want a 5x7, it's $30. It's not too shabby for a touched-up image. Again, we just want to keep our clients happy. That's the number one goal in our business, and it always has been, is keep people happy. If you keep them happy, they're going to come back, they're going to refer you, and you don't have to spend money marketing in magazines and doing bridal shows, which we do both because we like to. But yeah, we definitely want to keep them happy. And also, they approve that album 2 weeks afterwards, and then 4 weeks after that approval, they get their album back. So 6 weeks after the wedding, they have everything done. And I think that's a great way to get through clients. It sounds bad, but it's honest. You know, you don't want to spend 9 months after the wedding trying to get everything finished for your client. You want to get it done as fast as possible. So for number one, they're happy. Number two, you don't have to stay up late at night, you know, stressing about all these clients that are backed up.
That's great. A couple little technical questions that are coming up. Go ahead.
Seems like we're confusing people. I'm reading these little notes. I know I contradict myself a little bit because we shoot portraits and we also shoot weddings, so it's tough. We do two different policies for both, or a policy different for each one. So when we're talking about weddings, it's one thing. When we're talking about portraits, it's completely different. So I hope I'm not confusing people. Sorry, guys.
Well, no worries, man. And like, there's a couple folks in here, like Miss Emmanuel, and there's one person, NJ Monkey Boy at Twitter, that are asking for different things. And I'm not sure I understand. And if you guys could clarify, maybe in the chat room or in the questions, what exactly you're asking. But I will say this: upselling an album, a portrait business, a wedding business, these are all kind of unique technical things within the nature of the whole business that we're trying to engage here. And understanding what you're trying to accomplish, where you're currently at, and having a game plan to get from A to B is really all we're addressing. So if you're trying to sell a 5x7 print, how do you add value to it? If you're trying to sell an 8x10, how do you add value to it? If you're trying to sell a bigger album than was initially purchased, how do you add value to it? We're answering that same question multiple ways depending on the product and depending on the businesses. So I might run my business different than JB does, and that's okay. The point is to be thoughtful about how do you get in the mind of the client and add value to them consistently, with regardless of what the product is. And that's not an easy task. It's really to put it on their shoes and their kind of glasses to see what they're seeing is the big challenge. Let me see here.
Yeah, just to add to that too, Dane. Sorry.
It's okay. Go for it.
We have a little lag. Just to add to what you were saying, it is a challenge, and you know, in this bad economy, we've noticed we're trying not to overcharge people. Not overcharge, but we're trying not to oversell to people, because my wife and I are very good salespeople, and we notice over the years our photography gets better. People want more of the images and they spend more money. So we're trying not to get above a certain number, whether that be 4,000 or 5,000, whatever. If they get to that point, that's when we say, okay, what else do you guys want? And we try to help them out and give them big discounts, anything to keep people happy, so they're not overspending, because it's so easy to do when you have good images. And maybe it's your first portrait session ever with your new family, and you want everything. You know, I'm a new father myself, and I want everything of my daughter that Kim Wiley photographed of our daughter Brinkley. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's tough sometimes. Put yourself in the shoes of your clients and sit back and realize, you know, maybe they don't want to spend this much money. You know, let's take it back and let's see what they really, really need and get them what they want, so they're happy and they come back and they refer us. We had a horrible incident our second year of business. We were shooting a lot of high school seniors, and this one client spent a lot of money, and she went around and told everybody how much money she spent with us, and we were excited. You know, like, wow, we've never sold that much. It was our goal to just make money. And then she went around and told everybody, and it killed our senior business. We didn't shoot another senior that year, and that really hurt. You know, you look back and you're like, wow, I shouldn't have oversold that client. I should have, you know, kept it in a box where she's not spending too much, because I saw that she was getting a little out of control with her spending, and it hurt our business a little bit. And I would say if we have any complaints in our wedding business, our clients always say, not all of them, but some of them say they spend too much. And, you know, that's kind of a stab. You don't want to hear that. You want to hear that they're happy with their wall portraits and their albums first. So we definitely put ourselves in our clients' shoes all the time.
I think it's brilliant. I mean, we're getting a lot of questions in the chat room for me to clarify what I said earlier about upselling on the album, and it actually fits in line with what you're saying, JB. There is a sense in which there's, from the mindset of the client, nobody wants to walk away feeling resentful. And even if you're able to convince somebody to buy more than they were going to purchase, if eventually it's going to come back to bite you because they're bummed, or they didn't really feel like they got the value for the long haul, they're gonna get discouraged and probably say negative things about you. So I think it's really smart to get in front of that. What I was suggesting with the album sale is it's actually to mitigate against those very things. So a huge priority for me is to say up front, at the consult, look, this is what it costs for anybody to buy my albums, and this is what it costs anybody to buy more pages. And before you even book me, I want you to know what those prices are. And by the way, when clients are looking to get their albums, some photographers say, okay, what are your favorite 150 images, and we'll build a book out of it. What I do is I do this thing called album pre-design, where I actually hire a designer, that's a value add, and we design the album, a first draft of the album, that's comprehensive of the whole wedding day. So instead of having the 20-sided album that's included, I give them a 60 or 80-sided design that they would look at online through like Album Exposure, and then they're able to edit down from that versus edit up. And the downside of it is, and I say this directly to the client, I say the downside is, at least my job primarily is to create the best images I possibly can. Your job is to not buy them all. Then they laugh, and I smile, and I say, no, really, it's true. And I'm going to make it even more tempting, because I'm going to give you a 60 or 80 page album to look at. And it's one thing for you to look at somebody else's album, like a sample album, and say, oh, look, you can see the whole story from start to finish in 20 sides. But when they're your images and it's your day, it's going to be tougher for you to say no to these things. And I just want to let you know in advance, please don't get mad at me later if you upsell yourself. It's not uncommon at all for people to get more album later. And to help you with that, if you want to anticipate it, if you want to pre-purchase albums, you can do it at a 30% discount. And if you purchase a modest amount of pages, that discount is going to continue. So you can keep that 30% discount on any future album sides or pages that you purchase. Well, all this stuff is done before they even hire me. And what's nice about it is it establishes trust with them. There's no kind of bait and switch. It's all kind of out in the open. And later on, if they decide to buy more album, which they usually do, they're great. And in fact, what I've done is my package prices were at that point around $8,000. And what I did was I actually lowered the package price to $4,900. But then it works out, if you do the math on it, if they add 14 more pages, it gets the package price up to closer to $8,000. So I actually didn't lose anything, but it gives the client more power of, if I want to add more pages now in advance and get the advantage later, they will. And when they're in that mindset of getting more album, it's actually qualifying them around their budget and where they want to spend their money. And it seems to have worked out pretty nicely. But that's just one strategy. There's a lot of different strategies to go about it. And ultimately, the bigger question is what JB.
Yeah.
Go ahead, JB, because ultimately it's really about how do you raise value. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. We do the same thing. You know, we used to have these huge packages. This was before the economy went bad. High five. There we go. Focus. And we took our packages down, and we said kind of the same thing. If people, let's get them at that base rate. We don't want to mislead anybody ever, because that's not good for business. So what we do when people book us, we have a 16-page booking contract. On the back of it's all the legal stuff, and the back of it's the contract. The other 14 pages are all client education. It's got our pricing, it's got our upgrades for more pages, parent albums, mini books, whatever. Everything's there so they can add it all up before they sign a contract. We read every single word of that so everybody's crystal clear on what to expect from Salif Photography. And it saved a lot of problems. We've had this for, I think, 3 years now, and it's awesome. It took us a full week to sit down and write this thing, but it's alleviated every single issue and question we've ever had in our business in the past 8 years in this one little booking pamphlet. It's got our shooting locations, our favorite places in Dallas, Texas to shoot. So they can go on it, and they don't have to call our office manager and talk on the phone with her for 30 minutes. It's got all 8 locations, the shooting fees, the minimums, all that kind of stuff. So the clients are really happy with that, and they see, okay, if I want 20 extra pages in the album, maybe I should upgrade to the next package up now, because it's going to cost me a lot more. I'm getting a volume discount with that next package. And a lot of times after they read it, they upgrade to the next package. So it kind of works in that way, which we never expected. But definitely, and I see a little conversation going on here, and I just want to kind of veer off for a quick second between Steve Nielsen and Miss Emmanuel. Hey, Steve, he's my Chicago buddy. And Miss Emmanuel's asking a question. I kind of lost it already, but she's saying, I want my clients to be happy, and I want them to have their images. And Steve said, remember, you got to make yourself happy and make money. And Steve's exactly right. That's what you got to do, is take care of number one. This is a business. I think a lot of us photographers are true artists, and we forget we've got to make money too. We don't want to be starving artists. So I recommend to Miss Emmanuel, if you're not a good salesperson and you don't want to be the bad guy and take your client's money, get someone else to do it for you. Hire someone that can professionally come in and be your salesperson. Because remember, if you're making more money, then your family's happy and you're happy, and that's the most important thing. You know, everybody wants to be an artist and make their money, but definitely make sure you're not giving your clients everything and not making enough. So it's a balancing act, and it's tough.
And the other part of it too, JB, is if you don't stay viable as a business, you actually aren't hooking up your clients. They're not going to get taken care of because you're going to be out of business. If you don't run a profitable business, you don't have a solution. So just encourage you to consider that out there. A couple other quick questions because we're almost out of time. Actually, we're already out of time, but I want to run through them here. Miss Emmanuel asked the question, do you give them a high res or low res of the CD? Any quick answer to that?
Okay, quick answer for portrait. We never sell the CD unless they buy that proof box with 50 images. They're 5x7 at 250 DPI, and they're 50 touched up JPEG images. For weddings, we sell the raw files straight out of the camera, not processed, not touch up. We don't expect the client to ever try to print those images out. They don't have printing rights. They have, what's the word? They can store them. I can't think of the word right now. Archival.
Okay,
rights.
archival,
so
right.
Archive them in case there's an emergency. Yeah.
That's great.
So two different things. I hope that makes sense.
It does. A couple more questions here. JRL asked the question, what album company would you suggest that is flexible on adding pages? We probably both had different answers to this. Why don't you give yours first?
I know Albums Inc. is great. We used Canberra for years, and they just went out of business, so that kind of stinks. But I think almost every album company out there is pretty good about adding pages.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the issue. I think it's finding, well, same thing. I think it's not going to be an issue of adding pages. I think it's a matter of, you're not going to add them. You're going to, when you do your final order, it's going to have whatever amount of pages you agree on with your client. You're not going to add pages and slip them in later. So my encouragement would be to just get a company that you trust. I've heard great things about Albums Inc. I've not used them before, but I've heard they're great. I use Leather Craftsman. I've used Kiss. I've used Queensbury, although they're very expensive. But a lot of that's going to be dependent on what's the demographic you're marketing to and what kind of books would be most attractive to them. So some companies are more funky, some are more traditional. Find a company that's going to be a good fit for your target. Let me see. This is a funny question. Joey McDonald asked the honest question. Here it is. What do you do when the client demands a CD at initial consultation? I always laugh when clients demand anything when you haven't worked out a contract yet. But how would you respond to this question, JB?
It happens all the time, and I think the easiest answer to give them is, well, let's shoot the wedding first, and then after the wedding, if you want the CD, it's $500 for the raw files. And if they're really persistent, they're just not your client, and that's okay.
It's totally okay.
It's tough to hear, but it's okay. Move on.
Yeah, there's a lot of other clients that aren't being serviced while you're hanging out with this one.
Right.
And then let me see, one more question. Well, let's just cut to this question because I think it's an important one. It's coming up both in the chat room and also out here. Both Sparkfly Photo asked the question, can I see the booking contract? It'd be really helpful to have a place to start. And then also Betsy Blue asked the question, does JB offer his booking contract for sale? Is that something that...
I think that's a segue.
It is. That's a gift right there.
We do sell it. That's funny. We do sell it on our website. Sorry.
Where do they go?
We're crossing into each other. It's SalibPhotography.com and then click on resources for photographers. I didn't come on here to make money, so why don't I just figure out some kind of discount code? We'll just make it Dane.
Okay.
I think we sell it for $150, and if they want it, they can get it for like $50. So it's 66% off. I didn't plan on that, but if you guys are interested, I'll do that for you guys.
That's great. So they go to your website and then click on the store, and then they can put in Dane, and they're going to get 66% off. Is that right?
Yeah, let me write this down so I don't forget to do it.
That's great. And maybe if you wouldn't mind, JB, jump in the chat room and give folks the link directly, and then they're going to type in the code, and if they want that, that'd be great. Now, really quickly, because we're almost out of time, I want to ask the question about your event that's coming up, or is happening already with Lori. Lori was on the show just a few weeks ago, and she's someone who I have super high esteem for. She was part of Escalate Live, and And by the way, if you want to see more of her, check out escalatelive.com. But tell us a little bit about the tour you're on with her and what's coming up for people if they're going to have a chance to see you somehow. Where would they find out more about?
Yeah, we're going on tour with Lori Nordstrom this year. This is our third national tour, and we decided to team up with somebody else. And Lori's just the perfect fit. I mean, she knows everything that we don't, and it's awesome. She knows everything about pricing, and she's so smart. She's been our mentor for years and helped our own business. We thought it was just logical to go on tour with Lori, and we'll be going on 25 city tour starting July 10th, I believe, in Houston, Texas, going all the way to Honolulu on August 26th. So that should be fun. And it's CelineNordstromTour.com, and I'll type it into the little thing down here, or it's also TurnTheKeyTour.com. And it's 5 hours in every city. Every single paid attendee is going to get a take-home workbook that is awesome and full of information. And we have a guest speaker in every city. We got 25 guest speakers total, and we got some awesome sponsors that are giving away some amazing free gifts as well. So I think the cost is only $59 if you type in Dane. I do have that one plugged in already. So if you type in Dane, you'll get in for $59, and you'll get over $1,000 worth of sponsorship gifts, which is incredible.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
that's awesome, dude. Thank you so much for that. I know a lot of people are going to benefit. Okay, so our time is up, and we need to jam. And I just want to thank you again, JB, for being on the show. If you're on the show live right now, you can jump in the chat room and get all these links. Be sure to do that. Be sure to be following at JB Sully and at Dane Sanders for future updates. Really appreciate you being a part of that. And by the way, JB, when you put the link in, put the http:// so that it'll make a hyperlink. If this is valuable to you guys, please say so on the interweb and let people know. We do this every week. The next couple weeks are pretty special. We're having this coming week. I want to make sure I get my dates right on this one because it's a pretty big deal. Let me see here. On April the 26th, Tuesday, we're actually going to have CC Chapman on. And if you don't know who CC Chapman is, go to Amazon.com and type in c.c.space-Chapman, and you'll see who it is. This is an amazing author, kind of in the same circles as Guy Kawasaki and John Jantz of Duct Tape, and Seth Godin. All these guys are just really prominent author. He is a speaker at South by Southwest this year, and he is gracious enough to come on this coming Tuesday. And then the following Tuesday, May 3rd, we're actually going to have Trey Ratcliff on from HDR fame, and it's going to be a huge treat. And then Tuesday, May 10th, we have Zack and Jody Gray, who will also be on. So great couple weeks coming up. But again, thanks so much for being on this week, JB, and for everyone for putting up for the crazy scheduling stuff. And we'll have the replay up here shortly. And thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. That was awesome.
All right. Take care. Bye, you guys.